And welcome everyone, and special welcome to Lee, of course, joining us from Canada and giving up some of your evening to be here with us together today. So thank you very much, Lee. And I'd really like to, I know the book's been out for a year or so now, came out last year, but it's never too late to say congratulations. And thank you so much for this beautiful contribution to the world of yoga therapy. So thank you. And
Can I just say one thing? I don't I don't know if people caught it. This is book co-authored by me and Ananda Bhavanani Balayogi. Okay, so there's two authors to
thank
this
you.
book.
And I've got that as one of the second question to explain that collaboration, because I'm really interested in how that came about. Um, I was going to say that, yeah, I'm a big fan of the book. I did read it last year, word for word, cover to cover, and also again in the weeks leading up to this, I again read it to cover every word. And I kept thinking, oh, I'll just skim over it, and then I go, oh no, I can't. I've got to read it all. It's just a beautiful, inspiring book. So it's great to have this time to look at it. Oh, someone's asking, what's it look like? We can make sure. Maybe someone that isn't speaking could put in the chat the title there. Could you do that, Natcha, maybe? So actually, I'll give a little overview of what we've got in mind for the hour, perhaps see how we go. But we're thinking that we'll just have a bit of a chat with Lee and get to know her a little bit more. And then we were talking about, yoga therapy as a healing system, or for yoga therapists, it's important that we have a strong foundation, that we have a traditional and a scientific foundation to our work, and then we learn about how we apply that with our students and our clients. So we thought we might approach this session a bit like that too. So we'll learn a bit about Lee and the collaboration with Dr. Bhavanani, and then look at the concepts and the structure of the book itself, and then how that's been applied into Lee's work with her cancer retreats. And then some time for questions at the end is where we're heading. So I noticed when I was reading about this event that Yoga Australia said that this could be a good event for people to look at how to develop their own career into yoga therapy. And I thought that it's most of us are inspired by people that have gone before us, and it's very useful, interesting, and inspiring to hear from people about what their path has been. So, Lee, I wondered if you'd mind taking a little bit of time, maybe about your introduction to yoga and what led you on this path eventually towards a very successful career in yoga therapy.
I guess I don't really know how to phrase it, because I just to survive a very difficult period of my life, I started to meditate. I didn't know what meditation was. I just knew that if I sit for half an hour, 15 minutes, half an hour, or an hour with my eyes closed and not moving, something happens and I feel better. And that I needed it so much that I started to meditate 3 times a day. And at the time I was in the corporate world and in quite high in the ladder, and so a lot of stress. And so I took a break for lunch, and I would go to the washroom because there was no other place that I could be alone. I went to the washroom and meditate, sat on the cubicle for half an hour and meditated there. And it went on for about 15 years. And I found myself in ashram, being a visitor, a guest visitor to the ashram in Caribbeans. And I learned that that was yoga. So suddenly all these meditations, which I didn't think about meditation, I just thought about my own time, which actually developed by itself and progressed by itself. And so when somebody assessed my meditation, they said, you don't need anything, you just do what you do. You know, and that's how I learned yoga. And then came I mentioned that places would suck me, and I went for 3 weeks to visit ashram. 3 weeks became 3 months, after which I was asked to stay for a year, offered to become a senior member of ashram for a year, which I did, and then we didn't talk about me going back ever to Canada. So 3.5 years later, I was still in the ashram, except I was diagnosed with cancer. So I went back to Canada for treatment. And by then, being in the ashram with Kundalini Yoga Master, gave me a good foundation, not only in practice, but also in the philosophy and theory on that. And so after I did my treatment, and there was one point in this treatment which weighed on my life later on and career in yoga therapy, and that was when I finished. I went through lumpectomy and chemotherapy and radiation, and it all lasted 2 years. And at the end, at the last visit, when I was dead tired, I was depressed, I had all these symptoms of us going through the chemo. The doctor told me, we did everything for you, now you can go and live your life. And I looked at him and I'm thinking, life? Where's life? I can't walk up the stairs 1 flight and you talking about life? So that really stuck with me, that moment of completely being misunderstood, left alone in the lowest point in my treatment. That really stuck with me. At the same time, my husband at the time would have a triple bypass, and he would have a 6-month rehab every second day. And I'm thinking, you've destroyed my body, you've destroyed my mind, and you're now telling me to go and live my life. So that was really, really hit me. So anyway, so then I started to work with cancer patients and with other different cases. And I noticed that yoga not only helped me, but was helping them. So I thought, there's something in it. And I decided to go to India to study at Yoga Institute in Kavailadam, which is the oldest, or one of the oldest yoga institutes in India, to study for 9 months yoga therapy. Well, I went there for 9 months, and before 9 months passed, I created that retreat, and they've asked me to stay and teach. And so I stayed there 6 years. And I ran those, I was teaching different courses, and I ran these retreats. And they were just, they are just miraculous. I think yoga is miraculous. So that's my story.
Fantastic story.
Yeah, so I didn't even think about yoga therapy. I didn't even think about yoga. It just happened in my life. I look back and I feel that I was led, that everything that happened to me, with me, led me to the point where I am right now. And I really truly feel led somewhere. where I don't know, and I don't care because it's just fun to be on a ride.
It's ongoing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that illustrates that, you know, you're such an experiential pathway into a career, isn't it? That's the classic thing. It's not like you sort of looked at what kind of job do I want, but an experience of life led you there, which is very, very evident, actually, I think, in your writing. It's something that gives it that sort of, you know, an authenticity about it, because it's from direct experience of yoga. Yeah,
And I think that, you know, most of us really experienced yoga therapists were led into that by our own experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this is not something that you read about and study. Yoga is something that you have to, or yoga therapy is something that you have to live. And only when you live it, then you are able to help others.
Yeah, that's right. I was just thinking about it's like, you know, keeping that link to that aspect of ourselves, isn't it? What brought us to this moment to be the yoga therapist, and that the person in front of us is having that experience too, aren't they? Like we're coming into that point of someone's life where something's led them to that moment as well. And it's that sort of continuum of that, you know, human experience of looking for self-healing or self-empowerment, isn't it? But knowing that we need some assistance, and you know.
And then there's other side also, where people are coming not here for yoga. People are coming here, meaning to yoga therapy, because everything else failed. And now they're coming just to check another way that maybe this will help, you know? So when I work with people, my approach is not to load them with philosophy. My approach is to see where they are and lead them by being half a step behind, so to speak.
Yeah.
Where they want to go.
Shining their torch where they want to put the feet.
Yes.
It's like that fundamental definition of yoga from Vedas, isn't it? Of you know, to remove dukkha, to remove all we're there for, isn't it? To remove the suffering for this person. It just happens that we've got all these tools and techniques and understanding that we call yoga, isn't it? But fundamentally, it's
exactly, yeah,
you know, the removal of suffering. That's probably a good point for us to if you could let us know a little bit. I'm fascinated by the collaboration that occurred with Dr. Ananda to this book. How did that come about?
Oh, because we connected in Kevailadam. He's, I think he's now on the board of advisors in Kevailadam Yoga Institute. And he would come quite often to Kevailadam, and we started to sort of discuss, and he was interested in my retreats that I was running. And I have to say that he's a very exceptional person. He was born off yoga, because his father was guru, right? And they were very consciously conceiving the son. And so he was yogi before he did anything, you know. And so by age of 18, he was accomplished yogi, very set in the tradition of his father. And then he did the medical studies. So he became a doctor, medical doctor. So you have this person who his soul is in yoga and his knowledge is in Western medicine. So this is a very exceptional, apart from him being just a wonderful, lovely, warm-hearted and funny person.
Yeah.
So he also wrote co-wrote a couple of research paper on my retreats, but really I didn't think much about collaboration until, when was that? It was 2018 that he was speaking at Sitar, where was 18? It was 18. That
Yeah,
was,
yeah, in it's in California, I think. Yeah.
yeah, and he was, and it was a time where there was a big question about what yoga therapy is and what it isn't, and people were confused. And some people would say, "Well, I'm yoga therapist," and I would ask, "So what do you do? Where do you?" "Oh, I go to hospitals and I work with clients in the hospital." And I said, so I would ask, "So how long time do you have with each client?" And person would say, "Well, about 15 minutes." And I would say, "So what do you do?" And she would say, "I sit and listen." you know so and then you have those who are really set in yoga therapy and working from traditions like Krishnamacharya, where it's very much set in relationship and knowledge and experience. So there was a whole gamut of people who were claiming I'm yoga therapist without really understanding what yoga therapy is. And somehow Ananda felt that too, because his lecture was all about what yoga therapy is. And as I was listening to him, and I thought, he's the guy to add some good value into the book. So we went for lunch, and I've asked him if he would share his knowledge, and he was delighted, and that's how it started. So we divided certain subjects between him and me, and that's how we were writing.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's take that little piece on its own, maybe, which is certainly very prominent in the early chapters of the book, about that, struggle to define what is yoga therapy, and also currently about, what's it likely to become. And I know, Dr. Ananda has got that yogopathy he talks about. Maybe you could speak about. Actually, there's a beautiful part in the foreword, actually, of your book by Stephen Parker, when he says, "This book is a corrective drift." I love that he said that. Oh, so beautiful. This book's a corrective drift from yoga becoming a sub-discipline of medicine. Yes. How beautiful. Maybe you'd like to comment on that in a bit.
Well, what is happening for emerging field is that we are in the field of health. On one hand. On the other hand, a field of health is really monopolized by Western medicine. And Western medicine is about particular organs at particular stage of pathology. It's dividing. It's taking, if you have a problem with your mind, you go to neurologist. If you have a problem with your heart, you go to cardiologist. And on top of that, is very prescriptive. In that, if you have these symptoms, you take this pill. And it doesn't really, I don't know what were your experiences in the hospital, but when I was treated for my breast cancer, I felt like a number. I was put here and then moved here, and from there I was moved by nurses here. They were all fantastic nurses, but I wasn't human. I was an object that was moved around the healthcare. So the tendency at the time, and I don't know whether it's still prevalent, but at the time was that we need to become more like medical healthcare. And that's where the problem began, because yoga is not prescriptive. Yoga is about the human being first, and then about dukkha, suffering. And so you can't, you know, I feel that you cannot push the square peg into round hole, and that's what we were trying to do. So when Ananda started to talk about yogapathy, it was just fantastic, because that's exactly what it is. You know, what do you? So people will ask me, so what do you do? What kind of yoga do you do for cancer patients? And what kind of yoga you do for diabetes? And what kind of yoga you do for cardiovascular problems? And I start always with saying, I don't do yoga for the disease. I do yoga for a person, right? So we need to change the paradigm. If we are to be a really good yoga therapist, we need to change a paradigm to see the person first, to assess the person first. That assessment is based on constantly developing close relationship with the client, and a trust with the clients. The more trust the client has to us, the more she will reveal to us. And of course, our assessment is based on Panchakosha, which is not only physical, which medicine is dealing with, but also psychological, also emotional, also you have Panchakosha, 5 sheaths, right, that you're looking at, assessing constantly. And then you can, according to the person, not according to the disease, you prescribe or you suggest certain tools, which then you evaluate, right? So there is this yogopathy which says, okay, for cancer, this and this and this you do. And that's yogopathy. That is trying to fit yoga therapy, or trying to fit yoga therapy into medical model. And then somehow yoga is left behind in my mind. So that was my deep concern. And when I heard Ananda saying that, I thought, yes, we are on the same track, right? And so he talks about yogopathy versus yoga therapy. So when we are approaching client as yoga therapist, we're not fixing the disease. We're not fixing the person. We are there to help the person fix themselves. And that's the basic change in paradigm as far as medical world is concerned.
Yeah. And expressed in your title, I've been sort of looking at how there's different commentators at the moment using different words in yoga therapy to get that across, and you've summed it up there with the whole person approach. As simple as that, isn't it? Yoga therapy as a whole person approach to health, and whole person using the physiological, or the, you know, what I've got one from Melissa, you know, biosocial, spiritual models that we have in yoga for thousands and thousands of years, and how do we use those models? And like you said, it's the yoga therapist's job too to just, you know, look at the assessment through all those layers and through all that sort of the social and physiological models, spiritual models that we've had through yoga, and help use them so that the person helps themselves to heal, isn't it? You know, is our is our job. There's a good part of the book where it talks about practices to lower blood pressure. Shavasana for X number of minutes lowers blood pressure, and then that sort of good thing about but the yoga therapist needs to look at why's the person got high blood pressure in the first place and address
it's not about symptoms, right? It's not about symptoms.
Not about the symptoms. Yeah. It's not about. But in fairness, we're straddling both worlds, aren't we? As our profession evolves, that there's it is very important. Of course, there is a role for evidence-based scientific research, and we must have that. And then, as practitioners, as therapists, we must hold true to our tradition and to our science, and try and sort of hold both ends, isn't it? And we have to move forward, don't we? And to keep our place in the world of health. So we've got a little bit of time before we go on to talking about your retreats, where I just wondered if we could hone in a bit on, underlying all of that is that, this is a spiritual science, isn't it? And a spiritual therapy. And I know you have some strong views and some very beautiful and valid views about, spirituality and the concept of yoga therapy, and, again, inviting us not to be shy about, yoga is a spiritual tradition. Therefore, yoga therapy is a form of healing the spirit or whatever. And also, that as we talked about before, it's the spiritual experience of the yoga therapist also that comes through that spiritual healing. And I know you have some really great thoughts about that, if you'd like to share them, Lee.
Well, first of all, as you know, I'm really struggling with IYT to include the word spirituality in their definitions, and so far I'm failing. And part of it is, I think, because people still connect spirituality with religion, and in populist mind, those go together. Spirituality doesn't go alone without religion. I'm hoping that we will be able to change it, but even the medical world has acknowledged the importance of spirituality in healing, in hospital healing, So I believe this is very important. I also truly believe that in order to be able to be a good yoga therapist, you can lead your client, only as far as you went. And so you need to have your own practice, daily practice, whatever it is that you do, but you need to have your own daily practice in order to look after your own spiritual development. And so if you don't have that, the tools that you'll use to lead your client will be very limited. And not only the tools, but also your own ability will be limited. Because, we have to remember that as we sit, even through the screen, as we sit with our client, there is a process of entrainment. And if you come to the session with developed maturity and spirituality, and with your high level of self-awareness, the more of it you have, the more client will be influenced by you. Not through the words, just by the exchange of energy. And the client might not even be aware that you are, that you are influencing them this way. But that's what happens in the session. So for you, in order to be a good yoga therapist, for me, in order to be a good yoga therapist, I need to first look after my own development. I need to know who I am, why I'm doing what I'm doing, what is my purpose in life. I need to if not know the answers, at least work on these answers. Then I can somehow hold the space on high energy for my client. That, in my mind, that is tremendously important, and that is what yoga is able to offer clients, what no other discipline is able to offer.
Yeah, good point. I mean, it makes I'm always looking at things that distinguish yoga therapy as a therapy, isn't it? Because you could say outwardly, are we different to an exercise physiology, a psychologist, a counselor, or whatever? But that sort of,
Right.
you know, that intrinsic spiritual aspect of our work.
Presence.
Yeah, and also the importance of our sadhana, isn't it, to help that not happening?
Yes, yes, that is another word that I want to have included by Ayurveda. And you worked on this too, and it's still not there, right?
So it still comes up.
So maybe in 10 years, maybe. But that's, to me, this is illustrating the struggle between the keeping yoga in yoga therapy and trying to fit yoga therapy into the medical model.
Yeah.
Those two words, spirituality and sadhana.
Yeah, and that's taking it sort of into a professional concept as well. Then, is what we're talking about as well. So, in the therapeutic context of the yoga therapy itself, but also in a professional context, that we're not shy of saying this is what makes you a yoga therapist. You know, this is what our professional body is representing. That yoga therapists are like this. This is what defines us. So we've had some discussions about that sort of spiritual sadhana being included in our code of conduct and our sort of requirements to being a yoga therapist, being accountable to that kind of practice. We've kind of summarized some of the first chapters of the books, not really summarized, but touched on the concepts in the first couple of chapters of the books. And then the book goes into discuss about, now what do we do with this form of assessment using the Panchamaya model, this approach of yoga therapy as a whole person approach to health. And then the book goes on to talk about how Lee applies that through her own experience she's described to us into the running of these fantastic 3-week retreats. So maybe at this point I could hand over to Natya to have a
I just want to say one more thing, because that's really, really important. What I think is over 60% of death is occurring due to non-communicable diseases. And these diseases are lifestyle diseases. And so to this day, traditional medicine does not know how to deal with these diseases. They deal only with symptoms. Whereas for us, for yoga therapy, this is a lowest hanging fruit where we can go in and really help to reverse these diseases by changing the lifestyle, but by doing yoga and by applying yoga therapy to the clients. So this is where we could really make a biggest difference.
I want to add to that too. I had that coming up. Could we talk about the NCDs? And I think that's a really big thing that maybe we could come back to in another session, because it's totally a pathway for yoga therapy, isn't it? Like that's our field right there, and it's huge. So
the time is way too short to dive into all of your work, Lee. While I'm a student of yours and have experienced your retreat through my personal experience with cancer as well. I will just place a few questions out to you to share with us. And one of them is what Leanne already mentioned. It is a 3-week retreat. In Australia, we had way shorter retreats than that, focusing on cancer. Why the 3 weeks?
First of all, the retreat is called Beyond Cancer. So it is for all the people that just finish retreat, they finish the treatments, and usually they are in the lowest point as far as fatigue is, and depression and anger and all that stuff is really mental and physical lowest point. So first week people are coming and are getting used to the very, very intense schedule. It's intense in that there is a 6 hours of yoga throughout the day, but only 1 hour of asanas, and very simple asanas and very gentle asanas. At the end of the first week, all the stuff, all the negative stuff that people feel is coming up. And so people usually go into crisis. A lot of crying, a lot of cleansing, a lot of anger, and we had that too on our retreat. And usually it comes out to the facilitators, right? Because we are sitting there in front of the room and we become the archetypes. So this is the end of first week. The second week, people are now working through their stuff using yoga tools. Again, 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And through the second week, they are able to sort of cleanse themselves. And now they are coming to a third week where they are now thinking of, oh my God, I feel so great. I will have to go back home. How am I going to apply that, keep that when I go back home? So the third week is the main motivational week where people are beginning to do their own, especially last 3 days. We design a specific protocol for each person, and they are practicing that on their own, so that with facilitators being there, so when they go back home, they are confident that they will be able to do this protocol every day or every second day, or however we decide they will do it. So because it's 3 weeks, we get about 80% of retention of the sadhana or practices in our clients after a year. We actually now preparing another research paper where we had we were tracing people from 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months, and now the data is being analyzed. But what I found was more or less 80% of people would keep their some form of the practices even 12 months after the retreat. Why? Because it makes them happier. It makes them better. So why not, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, you know yourself that it's different, right?
I do know it's different, and I understood in the last week while it is 3 weeks, and I'm now wondering why other retreats are shorter. I don't see a point in them being shorter now. But it's very challenging in our society to take this large chunk out, even though we have to work through so many things after the cancer treatments. And I agree with that as well. While for me, this retreat was partially to learn from you and also to experience it myself. On the second last day of the retreat, I felt a major shift And that shift was during one of the Yoga Nidra sessions, where we were kind of cleaning out our bodies mentally, where I felt that I did not have any idea about cancer still being in my body. It was such a profound experience to, whether it was still there or it wasn't, it doesn't matter. But I reached a mental calmness and a state of being that was allowing me to feel a healing. Now I'm wondering, as you shared, that 80% of the people are actually keeping their practice up. How many have shared similar experiences with you? Do you have any idea?
Well, a lot of people have had tremendous shifts, and I sometimes I don't even know about it. About you, I knew because you shared with me, but I had, just to give you an example, I had an English, and it's on my website actually because it's a nice story. An English gentleman, 70 years old, who was himself a psychotherapist, was very jovial at the beginning, first 2 days, and I was his friend and everything was nice. And then on the 4th and 5th day, I changed from a friend to a course leader. Oh, I knew that something is coming. And at the end of the first week, he asked me for a consultation. So I said, fine, let's sit down, have a tea, and let's talk. And he started, and he really let me have it. And I was this, and why did I do this? Why did I say this? And this was wrong. And I mean, he went on for about 15 minutes, and I was listening, and I was thinking, Jesus, what do I tell him? What do I tell him? How can I make him aware what he's doing? And I was the terrible leader, and I screwed up everything. Finally said, okay, I'm finished. Now you can answer me. And in last moment, somebody from upstairs or from home office sent me a message, and I said, okay, he is a therapist. So I said, Nick, do you realize that this is all transference? And he just was gobsmacked. And he says, oh my God, I have been working with the best therapists on my mother, and it still comes and kicks me. So he owned it, you see? In that minute, he was fantastic. He owned it, and he backed off. He then went to do his own meditation. He had a huge spiritual shift. And when he left, he wrote me a letter from England about his whole experience and how it impacted his life. And now he is, sorry, I should say that when he came to the retreat, he didn't know anything about yoga. He didn't come for yoga. But now he's using Patanjali Sutras in counseling other people.
Wonderful.
So there you go. I mean,
yes.
Now, I also ask you, coming back to 3 weeks, I also ask people like yourself, those who did 3 weeks, I ask, could we cut it to 2 weeks? Yeah. And
no way.
No way.
Yeah, as I said, leading up to this, I couldn't imagine it being any shorter.
Yeah. So it has to be 3 weeks in order to really give not only the results, but to ground people in the results, and then to give them enough confidence and motivation to do the whatever needs to be done on a daily basis.
And that is only through personal experience, which leads us straight back into that we as the yoga therapists do need our sadhana and our spiritual practice just as much.
Yes, we do.
So you've already explained by now that the participants come from all walks of life, or is there a thread that have practiced yoga before?
No. I had people who never heard of yoga sitting next to yoga teachers. And the result was the same. And the only factor that would determine the result was how honest the person is in their efforts to heal. Are they desperate? Do they want to really work on this? Or are they open to look at themselves and at stuff that comes out, you know? That's the only determined factor that talks to the success or failure. But I had just one, in all these years that I've been doing this, I had just one person quit after the first week. Mm-hmm. He couldn't take he just couldn't take the stuff that was coming out, you know.
Well, that's very good, given how many retreats you've been running and are still running. So besides this experience that we shared together, which is an in-person approach, you mentioned that you're now running retreats online as well. How is that working?
Well, you know, I was very reluctant because, as you know, personal contact and the group that is formed in these retreats, it's almost like family. So personal contact is extremely important. But Richard Miller said, no, you have to run it. So, and just before COVID hit, I had a group that we were going to go into to run in Canada. And the COVID hit, and these people were left. So I said, look, I don't know how it's going to work, but we will do it online. 1 week, let's do 1 week and we'll see how it goes. So we did 1 week on a Zoom. Mm-hmm. And they said, no, we want to go, but we need a week break because we weren't ready and we have families, we have to cook the dinners, so take care of home, and so that we can give us a week break and let's do next week. So I said, okay, so you take this week, do your personal practice, keep practicing, and we'll do, on the third week, we do second week. That's what we did. And then they said, no, we need to finish this, but give us a week break. So that's how it happened. So now it's 5 weeks, right? 1 week, then 1 week break. You do your practice, but you do also other stuff that you need to do at home. And then another week of the whole day retreat and a week break. And it's now 5 weeks. That's how it sort of happened by itself. I have to say also that I am now working on long COVID retreat. And that will be online as well. Because as it happens, long COVID has very alike symptoms to those who have people after chemo and radiation. So there is a problem with breathing, problem with energy levels, with exhaustion, with mental fog, and so forth. So I'm creating that 5 weeks for long COVID. And again, I think that yoga has a tremendous opportunity to help people because we are so strong on pranayama. You know,
I think it's an overdue thing to do to help those after COVID and the long-term effects.
So think about that. We'll do this in Australia too.
Good idea, I reckon. It's about time to move beyond COVID now.
Yes.
We've only got 5 minutes left looking at the time, so I will pause right here, although I would have many more questions to ask, and open up for any questions from anyone.
We do have a question in the chat from Avril. Is there a definition in the book, or are we able to provide a definition on what whole person is?
Well, the definition is implied in that when I describe the subject of assessment, we assess according to Panchakosha model. So you have Annamaya, which is physical, Pranamaya, which is energetic and breathing. You have Manomaya, which is emotions and just the thought. Vignamaya, which is of a whole person, and of course spiritual. So you have 5 levels of looking at the whole person rather than only physical. Does that answer your question?
Yes and no. I thank you very much, Lee, for answering the question. It's been great. Thank you, Leanne and Natcha. I know we have the biopsychosocial model, and I think you touched on that, Leanne, earlier. But yeah, I too have struggled with trying to understand to define whole person, and not from a yogic, from both, bringing both together, kind of, and giving a real scientific, not a scientific, but a way that people can understand it. Because if I went into, for instance, to talk to, you know, a non-yogic person, I think if I started to talk Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya, Kosha, they would be like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. So that's where I'm coming from.
But why would you want to talk to them about that? I never talk to my clients about philosophy unless they start asking the questions. I don't talk to them, I don't give them information. What I aim to do in the sessions is give them experience. Once they have experience, then they come back to me with questions. Natya, remember, I've never said anything about yoga at the beginning. We were just doing the yoga. And as a result of practicing tools of yoga, people start having certain experiences. Different people have different experiences. They will come back to me with the questions, and then I will start answering. But I don't, information is useless. Information is, unless they have experience, information means nothing.
Have we got time to sneak in? Jenny's been waiting patiently with one question. 1 minute. So Jenny's got a question. Thanks, Jenny. What is the role of intuition in therapy sessions?
Huge.
There you go.
Huge. But let me put the stress on this. You need to know, you need to be mature enough in your development to know what is your intuition. And for me, intuition is communication from headquarters, okay? From upstairs coming. That's intuition. And what is your own stuff? Because your own stuff is not intuition. So being able to know yourself enough to understand what is intuition is huge. Because just like I gave you a story about Nick and him, you know, pounding at me how bad I was, and I sat there and I'm thinking, what do I say? What do I say? How can I help him see what he's doing? And I didn't know what to say until in last minute, intuition came in and I said the right word. That wasn't my knowledge. That wasn't my intellect. That was my intuition. That was somebody from upstairs would send to me that idea. That's intuition.
But it was based on your spiritual practice, wasn't it?
Well, I had to be able to do that, right? I had to be able to receive it, because we all have access to it if we are developed enough, if we practice, and some people have to practice longer, and some people are born with it, who knows. I had to practice all my life to get this little voice, okay? But it's huge. And if you are able to listen to your own intuition and hear it properly, then you are really in a position to help other people without causing any harm, providing it's intuition, because it's a voice from upstairs.
Thank you so much, Lee. That was great. And Jenny has said, great answer. Thank you. So given the time, we will have to leave it there for today, but I would just let all of the attendees know that I'm more than happy to share Lee's contact details, her email address, if you do have any other questions that you would like to send through to her. And your book is available to purchase from Amazon.com.
Yes, it is. It is.
Excellent. So I think we just answered Katie's question there. Yep. Perfect. Is there anything else you would like to add before we finish up?
Thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be able to reconnect with Australia. I've been there twice. I love you guys. You have such a wonderful country and wonderful people. My experiences there were fantastic, always.
Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you, Leanne Davis, and also Natja, for your time today.
A pleasure.
And thank you to our lovely attendees who joined this session, and the recording will be made available within the next week.